Throughout history, punishment wasn't just about setting things right. It was about setting an example. Before prisons became systems of reform and rehabilitation, they were arenas of pain. Before laws prioritized rights and due process, they could prioritize fear. In ancient empires and medieval kingdoms, justice was often delivered with a heavy hand and a cruel imagination. It wasn't enough to imprison someone. They had to be broken publicly, painfully, and permanently. Torture became the ultimate weapon, a terrifying spectacle meant to control not just the body, but the minds of everyone watching. And these weren't improvised tools of revenge. They were designed, engineered, perfected over time to inflict the maximum amount of pain without instantly killing the victim. The real goal was simple: to make an example so unforgettable that no one else would dare challenge authority again. This video dives into 3 of the most extreme torture methods throughout history. Devices and techniques so cruel, so carefully thought out, that they force us to question what justice really looked like in the past. From a burning bronze bull designed to turn human screams into music, to a wheel that shattered every bone in the body, to a saw that split people in half, upside down. These weren't just punishments. They were performances, rituals, warnings to entire civilizations. Prepare yourself for a descent into history's darkest corners. Because once you hear what humans have done to each other in the name of order, you might never look at justice the same way again. Torture Method 1. The Brazen Bull. In the sun-scorched lands of ancient Greece, one of the most nightmarish devices ever imagined was born: the Brazen Bull. Crafted entirely from bronze, this life-size bull wasn't just a statue. It was a death machine. Created by the inventor Perillos of Athens, the device was offered to Phalaris, the tyrant of Agrigentum in Sicily. Perillos promised a spectacle like no other, a form of execution that would terrify the masses and amuse the elite. The condemned would be forced inside the hollow belly of the bull. Once sealed in, a fire was lit beneath the sculpture. As the metal heated up, it turned into an oven, slowly roasting the victim alive. But here's where the horror turns into theater. Perillos had designed a series of tubes and acoustic mechanisms inside the bull's head. As the victim screamed in agony, their cries were distorted and funneled through the tubes, creating the illusion of the bull bellowing in rage. This wasn't just execution, it was a performance, a public symphony of suffering. The story takes a twisted turn when Phalaris, impressed but suspicious, decided to test the bull on Perillos himself. He had the inventor locked inside his own creation and lit the flames. Though some accounts say Perillos was rescued before death, most agree he was eventually executed using the very machine he built. The Brazen Bull became a symbol of tyranny and cruelty, used to silence dissenters, rebels, and enemies of the state. Its fame spread across the ancient world and inspired similarly horrifying creations in later centuries. What makes this device particularly terrifying isn't just the pain it caused, it's the psychology behind it. A device designed not only to kill, but to entertain, to intimidate, to turn a human life into a grotesque show of state power. It was art, sound, and death, fused into one unforgettable message. And in that message, we see the horrifying depths of creative cruelty. Torture Method 2. The Breaking Wheel. Imagine a large wooden cartwheel, not rolling through streets, but mounted in a public square. Now imagine being tied to it, arms and legs splayed over the spokes, waiting for the cold metal of an iron bar to come crashing down. This was the breaking wheel, also known as the Catherine wheel, one of medieval Europe's most feared and brutal execution tools. Unlike quick deaths by hanging or beheading, the wheel's purpose was prolonged suffering. Executioners would begin by breaking the limbs of the victim one by one, striking with calculated force to shatter bones without killing instantly. Arms, legs, hips, each broken across the wooden spokes. Sometimes the blows were so violent that bones would protrude through skin, twisting limbs into grotesque shapes. But it didn't stop there. The executioner might then thread the shattered body through the spokes, weaving it into the wheel like some horrific tapestry. In some regions, the victim would be spun while the blows were delivered, disorienting and further traumatizing them. And once broken, many were left on display, their mangled bodies tied to the wheel and hoisted onto poles, left for birds, weather, and rot to finish the job. Death could take hours, sometimes days. The wheel didn't just kill, it erased dignity, identity, and humanity. In certain cases, a merciful executioner would deliver a fatal blow to the chest or neck. But mercy was not always guaranteed. Peter Neers, a 16th century German killer believed to have murdered hundreds, was broken 42 times before death. His body was ritually destroyed in front of crowds, a performance of divine justice. But this wasn't just about the guilty. The breaking wheel was used politically, religiously, and often strategically. It was spectacle justice, meant to reinforce the power of kings, the church, and the law. And it worked. Townspeople would gather to watch. Children stood on tiptoes. Priests offered final prayers as the wheel came crashing down. This method represents the fusion of pain and ritual, a ceremonial destruction of the human body, carried out in the name of law. And the most disturbing part, it wasn't hidden, it was celebrated. Torture method 3, sawing torture. If you think death is the end, imagine what it feels like when the end takes hours. One of the most grotesque torture methods known to mankind is the sawing torture. And yes, it is exactly what it sounds like. Used in multiple parts of the world, from medieval Europe to the Ottoman Empire and parts of Asia. This method involves sawing a person in half while they were still alive. But the horror didn't begin with the saw. First, the victim was hung upside down, usually by their ankles. This position was no accident. It forced blood to rush to the brain, keeping the person conscious for as long as possible. Then, the executioners began to saw, starting not at the head or chest, but at the groin. Bit by bit, the saw tore through flesh, bone, organs. The pain was unimaginable. Every movement of the blade was calculated, deliberate, drawn out to stretch the agony. And often, they didn't even saw all the way through. In some cases, executioners would stop once the saw reached the navel or chest, allowing the victim to bleed out, fully aware, fully conscious. This wasn't just a punishment. It was a statement, used against traitors, rebels, and heretics, those who dare defy religious or political authorities. One of the most notorious uses was during the persecution of Christians in the Roman Empire. Another occurred in 15th century France, and in some Islamic empires as a punishment for spies or apostates. It was often carried out in public. Citizens were forced to watch, to see what defiance leads to. Unlike other methods, the sawing torture didn't rely on elaborate devices. Just a saw, 2 executioners, and a bound, upside-down body. But its simplicity made it even more terrifying, because it proved that you didn't need a machine to cause maximum pain, just willpower and cruelty. As we reflect on these 3 brutal torture methods, the Brazen Bull, the breaking wheel, and the sawing torture, one thing becomes clear. Torture wasn't just about pain. It was about control. It wasn't enough to punish someone. They had to become a warning, a display, a lesson carved into flesh and memory. These were not hidden punishments in dark basements. They were carried out openly, sanctioned by the state, cheered by crowds, and blessed by religious authorities. So what does that say about us? About what we're capable of? Because the real horror isn't just a method. It's how normal it all was. Entire societies accepted this, even applauded it. And while these specific tools of torture have faded into the past, the mentality behind them still lingers. Control through fear, punishment for spectacle, the erosion of human dignity in the name of order. We still see it today, in prisons, in wars, in governments that silence opposition with brutal force. History's darkest methods are gone, but their shadows remain. And maybe the most dangerous thing we can do is forget them, because forgetting makes repeating easier. If you found this video eye-opening, subscribe to Mystery Junky for more deep dives into humanity's darkest chapters. And always remember, history doesn't just teach us what happened. It warns us of what could happen again.